Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about representation. LGBT representation ideally, as it is Pride Month, but also representation of mental disorders. Particularly, we're going to discuss how I feel about said representation as explored in some of my favorite video games. We're also going to be talking a lot about me. I'm transgender, polyamorous, and I feel like doing my part this June to make some important experiences and thoughts more transparent. So, let's get this started. I'm Addie. I go by Addie Lovestar, which I hope is soon to be my legal name, and no, you cannot stop me. I'm transgender, by which I mean that, although I was assigned male at birth, I see myself as female. I have rather severe dysphoria to the degree that my own body appears alien to me, and I often fail to mentally process it as my own. In romantic terms, my mind and body have a disparity. The emotional consequences of my dysphoria are that in order to feel like myself as I move about daily life, I use she/her pronouns and vividly imagine myself as who I'd like to be. The latter places a great delay on many of my physical actions and my thoughts, but it's what comforts me personally. As for dealing with transphobia, usually I try to pay it no mind or elsewise take a punk approach to it. But the existence of it is baffling to me in some ways and obvious in others. We greatly value individuality as individuals, but as a society we value sameness. Being humans, we all have pattern-seeking brains and look for shortcuts. Seeing someone with masculine features and knowing they're masculine is one of the simplest and most widely accepted shortcuts there is. Trying to take that shortcut from people is naturally going to cause problems. And although I think the solution to transphobia from that source is just to tell the transphobic individuals to suck it up, at least I understand the transphobia coming from that source. The more baffling side of transphobia, to me, is how sometimes smart or clever people fall into it. I want to be clear, I think it benefits no individual of the proletariat to engage in sexism. Sexism divides us, widens the gulf between us, and hampers genuine human connection and understanding. We want to fight the power, not fight other suffering people. We're all miserable together, so we may as well let each other live our best lives. I cannot think of a genuinely intelligent reason for being transphobic. In addition to being transgender, I'm also polyamorous. In spite of many negative assumptions associated with polyamory, I am outwardly romantic in the traditional sense. I love my loves, and I make them poetry and share sappy love songs with them, and have intimate date nights. It's a good time, and they mean the world to me. The world's obsession with monogamy is, perhaps, the thing I understand the least. Humans are made with a desire to spread love and sex as much as possible, to my understanding. Why is the thought of allowing consenting adults to engage in such a practice so criminal? It's not as though my being polyamorous stops anyone else from being monogamous. This is also a great opportunity for me to plug my girlfriend Delvy's channel. I'll leave a link to a video in the description where we played Torchlight together, and you can see two transgendered individuals coexisting and just generally enjoying each other's company. And lastly, I once had dissociative identity disorder. The world hurt, I was traumatized for a variety of reasons, and I needed a way to process the trauma. My mind fractured, and it created multiple personalities to help compartmentalize the world and shield me from emotional overload. This is in line with many common psychiatric understandings of how the disorder functions, though there are a lot of variants. Next, I would like to talk about representation that I enjoyed regarding various intricacies I just detailed, particularly transgender experiences and DID. Sadly, I couldn't find any representation I enjoyed that featured polyamory. Also, that movie Split, as someone with DID, I think it seems really dumb. Just wanted to get that out there. In the video game Deadly Premonition 2, there is a character by the name of Lena Doman. Lena is transgender. She was assigned male at birth and born into a family of gangsters, and describes the experience as having a soul distinct from her body, or perhaps multiple souls inhabiting her body. She felt suffocated by her father's prejudice, and so she left home, where she hatched an incredibly complex plot to slaughter her entire family line and reboot it with new blood. It's a bit intense, yeah. The thing I love about this character, and about the game's transgender representation, is that DP2 doesn't even try to pretend transgendered persons are flawless, obviously, but it also refuses to link her transgender nature with her criminal activity. Lena tries, throughout the game, to make excuses for her behaviors, romantic excuses. She blames her father for her murderous nature in some ways, but the game's protagonist York isn't having any of that. York, the FBI agent tasked with bringing Lena down, exclaims quite clearly that Lena has no excuse. Whether she's a minority or had a rough life is irrelevant to her personal, free choice to be a monster. Yeah, Lena went through some ignorant and understandably scarring trauma underneath her father as a child. Leaving home to be herself, though, was a good choice, and it would presumably lead to self-betterment. But it didn't. She clung to her scars and used them as fuel to return to her hometown for the sole sake of destroying others. Her character motivations are believable, disgusting, and haunting. That's a large part of what I want in representation. I don't want fantasy worlds where transgendered persons are perfect or shown to be virtuous and pure. I want flawed characters making horrible mistakes, because we're all that. That's literally everyone alive. Whether you're trans or not, your choices are your own fault, because you're still human. It's now time to talk about mental disorder representation. In the original Deadly Premonition, we first meet the character York, Francis York Morgan, an FBI agent sent to a small town to investigate a murder. He's an odd fellow with a lot of personal and emotional problems, and also one of the characters I'm most similar to in fiction. Though our particulars are worlds apart, we share many troubles. York has difficulties functioning in most social circumstances. He speaks in an unusual fashion, processes information and thoughts strangely, and is masterful at accidentally misreading social cues. His social difficulties tend to lean more toward stubbornness and confidence, while mine are more toward being overly literal and dissociated from emotion, but it's hard for me not to relate with him. The biggest and most grateful similarity I share with York is that we both experienced DID. Yeah, York unmistakably has dissociative identity disorder, or more accurately, Zach does. A boy named Zach once went through some unbelievably tremendous trauma. He lost his family and he was scarred emotionally and literally. To cope with the pain of his loss and to help shield him from further suffering, his mind fractured. He created York, another soul, so that he could stomach to keep going in the world. York became Zach's shield, his best friend, and his process. Ideally, this sounds familiar to my own experiences with DID. I think that kind of rocks. York and Zach are written in an immensely believable fashion that calls to mind not only real-life understanding of DID, but my own real-life understanding of DID, trauma, and social problems included. At the end of Deadly Premonition, York is forced to separate from Zach when something forcibly tears Zach back into the real world. It's tragic and beautiful and deeply emotional, and thankfully not what I had to go through. I just merged with my other personalities quite harmlessly, but that doesn't change the fact that Deadly Premonition understood a very particular, often misrepresented mental illness better than I've seen done anywhere else. It occurs to me that my picks for ideal representation are a bit unusual, and yeah, they might offend, but they feel real. I think the more we support flawed characters who feel real, the better the world will be. I also often relate my experiences with mental illness to my experience with being transgender. This too might upset some, and I have to ask, why? The neurodivergent deserve to be understood, appreciated, and represented just as thoughtfully as anyone else. Lastly, I couldn't think of a place to say so, but I do have a favorite LGBT song, and it's called What If I Am Queer by Human Kitten. It mirrors a lot of sentiments I've expressed in this video. I'll link it in the description. Happy Pride Month, everyone.